Hey Woolly Thrill Seekers, welcome to my Woolly PhD. I'm Liz Scarf and this is a weekly vlog about what I'm currently learning and making in my anthropology PhD all about wool. So you can find a brief overview of the whole kind of project in the introductory video on the channel if you want to get more of a sense of the whole picture. Otherwise, let's get stuck into this week. What's going on this week? Karan Barad is going on this week. Now, if you have heard of them before, you know what's about to follow is going to make like no sense. And if you haven't heard of them, I'd like to say you're in for a treat, but I will let you decide for yourself. So as usual, I will start with the readings just because I like to acknowledge the material I'm drawing from. And it's all Barad's work. So there's post-humanist performativity toward an understanding of how matter comes to matter, on touching the inhuman that therefore I am, okay, bear with me, and meeting the universe halfway, which is like, this is not a cover-to-cover kind of book. I don't know. I'm not sure I recommend actually directly reading any Barad, to be honest. I think asking an AI program to put their main concepts into everyday language is a really great place to start if you want to kind of dig down there. I just find them very hard to understand. But anyway, who are they? Karan Barad is an amazing physicist, particularly in the quantum physics area, and that's where this all starts to make no sense, and a feminist theorist. And there is this kind of rule of thumb or thing that kind of gets said around quantum physics, right? That if you think you understand it, you've actually missed the point. And to me, that it kind of makes sense in the way in which I try to describe or think that I can describe quantum physics, right, as this attempt to explore the nature of reality that is beyond the capacity of like our human cognitive systems to comprehend. Like we're trying to understand something that our brains are not evolved to understand. And that's why I kind of feel like for all the grappling that happens with it, it's just kind of really hard to feel like you get it. So I've spent most of this week just thinking, oh, I'm not learning anything. I'm just like confused a lot. So why am I reading about it in the first place, right? A core part of my research is to try to conceptualize wool as a vibrant material, right? Which is based on a term by Jane Bennett, who I introduced in the introductory video, who's a political theorist and has an excellent book called Vibrant Matter, which I think is much easier to read than Barad. And it's in the same region of thinking in some ways. But that it's really the idea that things are not inert. Like there's often sort of in Western cultural thinking this idea that humans are alive and there's other things that are alive, but this pen, this water bottle, these glasses, they're not alive, and therefore they are completely inanimate. There's no agency, there's no vitality, there's nothing coming from them. They are just things for us to do stuff with and to. And so the notion of vibrant matter really challenges that and says, well, it's not a human, it's not an animal, it's not a plant, but it doesn't mean that there's not something kind of vital within matter itself. And that therefore, if there's some kind of vitality there's some kind of agency. And agency is the idea that you can affect or be affected. And I definitely really think that about wool. I keep talking about that introductory video. It might be really important to watch, right? But in that, I kind of show this affect that wool has on me, right? Where I'm like, I love it. And there's a thing that doesn't just come from me. There's something about wool that engenders a certain experience. So we might kind of say there's some kind of affect or agency happening here because of the creation of affect, right? Anyway, yeah, I should have said this week. It's just going to be confusing. I mean, I'm confused already as I'm talking about it. Maybe you're not confused. Maybe that's a little condescending to assume it's confusing just because I'm confused. But anyway, so why it matters is I'm trying to learn through this PhD to perceive the world in a way that goes against my own sort of Western cultural conditioning And that requires some unlearning, right? Sometimes learning is you are building knowledge on knowledge that you already have, and it sits within a framework that you already have constructed. Sometimes learning is like you have to unlearn something to learn something else. And so that's what I've really felt like is happening this week. I felt really confused and thought I'm not learning anything. And then I realized, I'm in some process of unlearning to learn. And so that's what it feels like. It just feels confusing. But anyway, so back to agency and Barad and matter, things like objects, stuff, right? Is that there's lots of concepts that all point in a similar direction around this idea of agency, of that matter has some kind of agency, right? And most of them rest on this kind of interactional or relational thing where, like, I've got agency of a certain kind, this wool has agency of a certain kind, and we come together and our agencies interact. So this already stretches conventional notions of agency and what matter is and does, right? By suggesting that humans aren't, like, that I'm not the one with all the agency. It might says, maybe I've got 99% of agency in this interaction and the wool has 1. I mean, you can't measure, right? But this idea that we pre-exist and we come together and we've got agencies that interact, right? And when I talk about agencies of wool, right, it's not like that wool necessarily has a desire. Like, this is where it gets hard, right? How to think about matter having agency but not on human terms. And so maybe it's just about there's, the elasticity, the thermal properties, the texture, the fibre length, all of these material properties have tendencies of how to interact. And so, like, at a really kind of macro level, I might kind of say, like with a 1-ply that's not very balanced, if I knit that into a surface, into a fabric, I should expect that to have a bit of a lean, right? Like, there's a property there, so that might direct me, don't make a sweater with this, but you could make a shawl, it'll be fine. So that's like a really macro level of thinking about it. I'm continually, when I'm thinking about this stuff, trying to work out, it's so abstract, how do I make it concrete? And I think that's a bit of a problem. And it's just me trying to get some relief from being confused. But anyway, hopefully that makes a little bit more sense about, I'm not really thinking about that wool has some kind of desire. It just has tendencies based on its material properties. When we think about it in this kind of interactional or transactional way of thinking about agency, this is where Barad just kind of goes even further in the noodle frying kind of enterprise, right, with thinking about agency and matter. And she has her concept's called a gentle realism, and I kind of want to explain it, and then just also really aware that I don't really get it, but I'm going to share how I get it so far, and then in like a year I can just be embarrassed about this and say, hey, here's a new video about what I really think I mean now. But anyway, that's okay. I'll be kind of expose myself as a learner in process. So she just kind of says that agency doesn't pre-exist the entanglement, right? The interaction, right? It's not like human here with agency, wool here with agency, we interact. She says it's the interacting together, agency emerges through that. And I kind of have got that far with understanding, and then I just go, what does that mean in terms of enactment and world making, like creating things and doing things and being things in the world, right? So, and she also kind of says that the matter, the things don't exist either before interaction. It's not like, I studied this thing and then I saw it and it had these qualities. Those qualities must have pre-existed before I saw it. It's like the thing came into being through the interaction. So again, I just kind of feel like this makes no sense. I don't know how to make it make sense, right? So I guess that's what the video is. I'm in the middle this week of trying to make sense of something that doesn't make sense to me, and now I've got to share it in a video. So it doesn't make a lot of sense. That's okay. Part of learning is hanging in with the moments of not making any sense. But really, I do love this idea that the world comes into being, the world exists only because of the interactions that are happening. Interaction is what creates worlds. And again, why does this matter to my project? I mean, it's a question I keep coming back to. It's like, I think it's about trying to see past a transactional way of seeing the world, right? Where humans are in the center of doing things to everything else, right? And then how would I think about wool, not as a noun, like as an object, right? But as a verb, as like a doing, to wool or wooling, and from that point that maybe I can explore the doingness of wool in the world, rather than just what do people think about wool, what meaning or cultural stories do we have about wool, which again just kind of puts humans as thinkers and storytellers in the center of the research. And so I'm kind of grappling with how can I put wool in the center of the research, not just as an object, but as a doing. So wooling or to wool. And so that's why I kind of have to engage with ideas around like what Barad is kind of trying to bring forward, and try to kind of really shift my whole perceptual capacity, right? I don't know how that'll go. We'll see how that goes over time. The other thing too, right, is of course meaning, it does matter. Matter matters and meaning matters. But there's another thing Barad said. She says meaning and matter emerge together through these interactions. They're not like separate processes. And so I just think that's really interesting as well. Anyway, that's what I've been learning this week. And yeah, I'm slightly embarrassed to kind of share it because it's like, I don't know if I learnt much, but I grappled a lot, and I really wish I could put it into something more concrete, or less abstract at the moment. So, but let's see, maybe over time that'll happen. So that's what I've been thinking about or trying to learn about. What have I been making? So those socks I've been sharing, those little Julie Shorties by Martushka Makes. So I finished those, I gave those, so I can't show you them here, but there's some lovely photos of them on my Instagram feed. The links must be maybe in the notes, but it's called Liz Making With. So that's there. I also started and finished a sewing project, which is a present that I haven't given yet, so I can't say anything about that, but I'll have some photos of that on Instagram in a few weeks. But I did go camping, and camping entails, most of the time, a lot of driving and then a lot of sitting around. There was a lot of walking as well. And so I did get a lot done. Doesn't look like a lot of rows, but the rows are getting longer and longer every row. So I got quite a bit done on this cardigan test knit that I'm doing for Mini Me Designs, the Pyramid Cloud. And that's going along quite well. And the more I do it, I know if you watched previous episodes, you would have heard me say, I'm not sure I'll wear it. But the more I'm knitting it, the more I think I might wear it. So that'll be lovely. So I'm still enjoying that. And yeah, I think that's it for that week. Let me just check my notes Now I do promise it won't be this abstract or confusing every week. Well, I certainly better not be. I can't do like 3.5 years of this. But yes, thank you for watching. And as always, I would love to hear your thoughts on any of this in the comments, especially if you've made any connections between these ideas of agency and wool that are a bit less abstract in your own kinds of experience of being with and interacting with wool. I would love to hear more about it. People have already shared in the comments some just incredibly useful reflections and also suggestions for resources to read. So I just keep them coming. I love it. Yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week. Bye.